Hi, everyone. This is Baba Brooks. I want to welcome you to the Take Your Power Back interview series. I'm so glad you're joining us today. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I've been on the healing journey for over 20 years now, and I love to support survivors learn how they can live, love, and succeed after abuse and trauma. See, I do remember how hard it was to find the right tools and the resources to help me overcome the impact of the abuse. So that's why I decided to interview some experts, professionals, and wonderful survivor thrivers that are sharing with us the tools and the tips and their insights authentically how they are helping other people survive and thrive after trauma. So I want to welcome today our very special guest, Rachel Grant. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, thank you so much.
Good to have you. Thank you for taking a Friday afternoon to be here with me. So
no worries.
I love
My
it.
pleasure.
Before we dive into our questions, I know we talked about, we came up with some good things to share about how to take our power back after abuse. I want to introduce you a little further to our audience. So
Sure.
Rachel Grant is the owner and founder of Rachel Grant Coaching and is a sexual abuse recovery coach. She's also the author of Beyond Surviving, the final stage in recovery from sexual abuse. The final stage, I like that one. She works with survivors of childhood sexual abuse who are beyond sick and tired, right, of feeling broken, unfixable, and burdened by the past. Whew, those are heavy, heavy burdens. She helps them to let go of the pain of abuse and finally feel normal. Her program, Beyond Surviving, has been specifically designed to change the way we think about and heal from abuse. Based on her educational training, study of neuroscience, and lessons learned from her own journey, she has successfully used this program since 2007 to help her clients break free from the past and move on with their lives. Another good one, move on with our lives. Rachel holds an MA in counseling psychology. She provides a compassionate and challenging approach for her clients while using coaching as opposed to therapeutic models. She is also a member of San Francisco Coaches. Thank you, Rachel. That's great.
Thanks.
I love how you have clearly come from both worlds of therapy and coaching, and I know you're going to share a little bit about that with us. But I want to start and ask you, you have a big heart, you work with a lot of people, clearly making a big difference. Where does this passion come from, and how has that brought you to this point on your journey?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share a little bit about my own journey and the work that I get to do every day with just amazing, amazing, and beautiful people. And, how I found myself here is quite a wiggly journey and could take a whole hour in itself, of course. But the big gist of it was that when I was about 10 years old, my grandfather, who had been living with us since I was about 5, up until that point had been a real friend of mine, and we would spend a lot of time together and just hang out, and oftentimes on the front porch, watching people across the street in the park playing. And I really thought of him as a companion, and I was also very nurturing as a little person, and so would love kind of like reading to him or taking him his, breakfast, those sorts of things. And so, one day when I was 10 years old, he kind of pulled me along with him to sit with him on the porch, and I really didn't think much of it. I thought, oh, he just wants to hang out, have some company, like usual.
Yep.
But unfortunately, that day was very different because this was the first time that he molested me. And of course, when I think back to it, feels so far away now these days, but when I really pull myself back to that place, it's like, I was scared. I was frozen for a while. I was very confused. And I remember almost immediately after that beginning to have thoughts that were very, very new. Like, why is this happening to me? I must be bad. There's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it went on for a while, and it got worse. And when my parents found out what was happening, one day my mom actually just caught him in the moment, and they were really great in that they got him out of the house right away. I really didn't have to deal with him much after that, and I'm very thankful for that because, of course, having done this work for some time now, I know that when we tell or when it's found out and there isn't that kind of support, it just adds a whole nother layer to the hurt and the pain. And they wanted me to get help. They wanted me to go to counseling. They even set it up, and I even went once. But then I was like, "Oh my gosh, no way I'm doing this." Y'all must be crazy if you think I'm going to sit here and talk about what happened.
Yes.
And really, what I wanted to do was just put my head in the sand and pretend that everything was okay. And that was essentially my strategy for the next maybe about 9 years or so, up until my early 20s. When I got into my 20s, I just noticed that I was starting a relationship and I just did not have any skills. I didn't trust anyone. I felt really bad about myself. So, of course, the type of people who I was connecting with were not that great either. And it just became clear to me that I needed to face this thing and deal with it. So I did. I started therapy. I started reading books, doing all the stuff we do, right?
Yep.
But I have to tell you about it after, I don't know, about 6 years of that, I was then going through a divorce. I had stayed with that person way too long, as we survivors tend to do in relationships.
Yes.
And I just had this moment where I was like, you know what? Something has got to give. Because if I don't really change, if I don't really figure this out, I'm going to spend the rest of my life just feeling miserable and broken, just kind of getting by, but not really living. And that's really what kind of lit the fire under my butt to get out there and study and read and research. And I started noticing something very in particular, which was every single time I went to a therapist or I talked to somebody, I would get these great insights like, oh, this is why I have this trouble, or this is why I can't trust, or this is why I get angry and throw Tupperware.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I would say, so what do I do about that? I just kind of got well, you can maybe try, or I don't, you'll eventually feel, it's just like, are you kidding me? And it just got so frustrating that I said, I've got to find the answer to this question, because it's the one that matters the most. And that's eventually, what became my work and what drove me to do what I do today, which is carry people from that place of, okay, I get it. I know why I do what I do, but what I need now are the skills and tools to how to actually set all of that down and go on and live my life and be the person that I want to be.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I ended up here these days doing the work that I do. And I'm so 100% committed to that piece and making sure that people know that it's not a life sentence. You don't have to stay stuck there. You don't have to be there forever.
Yes.
You can heal. You can move on.
Yes. It doesn't have to define you or the rest of your life. Or it doesn't even have to define you today. It's just something something that happened, like, I broke a leg or had a car accident.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of like those things.
That's exactly right. I often talk about that one of the things that I mean by being beyond surviving is that, when I say I have red hair and when I say I was molested, it has the same impact on me,
yes.
As far as how it feels for me at this point. Of course, when I share that with other people, which is another piece of what we learn, is how and when and, to share our story in a safe way. But for me, emotionally, they feel the same.
Yeah. But thank you for sharing that insight, because I can relate to that. I was just like, I had all these books telling me I was a textbook example of what had happened to a child, how I was responding to it, how I was acting out. But I'm like, but if we had documents about this, where are all the how-tos to change?
Yeah.
And and I think, therapy and all those different modalities have a purpose and a function, but it's just like, they're still just focusing on the problem instead of, let's get beyond it. So I connect with that, what you're sharing, and I know our audience will too. So thank you for really for bringing that to light. And I'm curious to hear, of course, what were the pieces that you came up with. So
right. Yeah.
So, and that obviously then, of course, because of your story, that became your specialty then. Did you consider other, I mean, do you help people with a range of pasts? I mean, in terms of other kinds of abuse?
Yeah, it's been really interesting over the the course of the last since 2007, since I really started this journey. It's been wonderful to explore how the lessons and the material can be adapted to address different types of abuse and even just life in general. So I work with survivors primarily of sexual abuse, but I've also worked with people who've been physically abused, emotionally abused. I've worked with women who have had really narcissistic mothers, and that's really impacted the way that they feel or see themselves. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with overachievers who are just, not living life at all. They're just doing. And something along the way told them that that's what they had to do in order to feel good about themselves. And so I adapt the program to work with them. And that's kind of one of my favorite things about some of the things that I've discovered is that the first tier is using what I teach to heal from the abuse. But then you can use the same skills and tools all over the place. So it's life learning. It impacts you and it takes you through all sorts of things in your life, not just this one area.
Yeah. Because change is change, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And the human condition is, in general, we resist it. We don't like change.
Yes.
Right? So I was like, I'm not the only one struggling. Normal people are also struggling with this process, So that was a big aha moment for me.
Yeah. And even, and I'll just add a little note to that, it's even beyond just our emotional relationship to change. It's actually neurologically. We're neurologically resistant to change. Not impossible, which is beautiful because the brain is very pliable and changeable, but it won't do it on its own. It will prefer to just stay the way that it always has been, right?
Yeah.
So that's why when we talk about this, I don't really like changing, there's actually something going on neurologically that is happening to produce that. Yeah.
Wow. Well put. Very well put. So then tell us about how you developed your book and your program, because that clearly you found a venue. This message was needed.
Yeah. Well, I started out kind of pulling together the pieces in the various areas that I noticed were not working in my life. Mm-hmm. And I actually, the very first kind of version 1 of Beyond Surviving, I was working with women in a small group setting, and I was using another person's text, but kind of already starting to build in my own kind of perspectives and lessons and exercises and such. Mm-hmm. And I even went so far, once I realized, okay, this is the work that I'm going to do, and I want to create a program, a very A to Z kind of thing. I was like, maybe she'll just let me adapt her book.
Yes.
Because, I was like, who am I to write a book and do all that, right?
Yeah.
But, she flat out said, no, that's not going to happen. And so I said, all right, I guess I'm going to have to write this thing. And honestly, I just set down, it had been so in my head and so percolating for so many years that when I finally said, okay, this is what I have to do, the book came out of me in about 6 months. And then it took another, bit to kind of put it all together and edit it, all that stuff. But essentially, it's built on my own experience, what worked for me in the various areas that are impacted by abuse. Mm-hmm. And it essentially provides a roadmap that I use with my clients, mm-hmm. so that as we're working together, we are taking a look at each of those areas. And I think one thing that's really important that I've learned over these years is that part of what makes recovery difficult, if you're working with a therapist or a coach or somebody who is not necessarily really focused on this kind of healing, is that if the survivor leads the way and determines the agenda, they're going to be bringing the things that are most maybe problematic to them in the moment. Like, oh, I'm really fighting with my boyfriend and I can't, blah, blah, blah. And so then all of a sudden, all the focus and all the therapy goes to that.
Yes.
Whereas what really needs to be dealt with are like 5 steps before that, foundational things. And so I've spent a lot of time tweaking the sequence, order of operations. You can't do this until you've done that. We can't talk about trust until we've, cleared out some of this shame and guilt stuff, right?
Yeah.
We can't even deal with forgiveness until you've actually blamed the person for what they've done.
Yes.
Right? And you're not taking responsibility for it. And so I think that's one of the things that I enjoy and really love about the program that I've created is it does help people feel like, okay, there's a step-by-step, and I know if I do this, then that's going to lead to this, and we're going to get there. We're going to get to that relationship stuff. It's on its way.
Yes. Yes.
But it takes away that frustration that comes when you put the cart before the horse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love how you put, and I've heard a couple people, and I think this is maybe new, and maybe this may be also why you love the coaching style versus the therapeutic style, where you more sit and listen to the, where the coaching, you can be more, directing them and empowering them to make some of the choices themselves. Because I absolutely believe that we can't rush anyone to be a survivor thriver if they haven't really owned what happened to them in a way that just really, like you said, clean it out completely. What was the true impact, and then we can, build something up on top of that. So
that's right.
Perfect.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I did choose, I got a master's in counseling psychology, and I was on the path to becoming a marriage and family therapist. But a couple of things happened that changed my mind about that and had me go into the coaching world instead. And the first was that I really wanted to be able to share my story and share my experience and talk about what I had been through without having to feel like there might be somebody coming over my shoulder like an ethics board.
Yes.
Because I just found that I think it's so impactful. One of the things I missed when I was trying to recover was like, where is the model? What does this even look like to not be this way? Because I've been this way for so long.
Yes.
And not that I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have some things in place and have a life that people can look at and go, okay, that's what it could maybe look like.
Yes.
She used to go crazy and throw temper tantrums on the ground, in front of the what? And now she's like, okay, all right.
Exactly. And thank you for saying that, because I do feel that's one of the things that one of the reasons why I wanted to do a video summit, because I wanted survivors to be able to see us and hear amazing survivor thrivers like yourself. Really, we're giggling here. We're talking about really sad, intense, painful event, which it was, but it's not here with us today. And we're sharing from the hope of what's possible again, but people are looking at you. It's like, whoa, so that's what that looks like. You have as humans, we learn by watching other humans. And there aren't so many humans out there that are saying, yeah, this happened to me and I'm okay with it. So thank you for that. It's really, really important and powerful. So I'm glad you made that choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other little thing that I'll say about that is what I've really come to think of recovery as is kind of like a 3-stage process. And essentially, that middle stage of surviving is where people need that time and that space to acknowledge what has happened to them and to just talk about it and be heard and start making some of those connections. Oh, this is why, this is the influence, this is the impact.
Yes.
And I think therapy is extremely powerful for that. I think it creates a great space for that to happen. My concern is that people can get stuck at that survivor stage, where they just keep reiterating, they just keep telling the story, they just keep going over it again and again. And on a neurological level, that at some point starts to become damaging, because you end up reinforcing beliefs, reinforcing the wiring, so to speak, that's in your head.
Yes.
And so that's kind of where I was like, okay, wait, there has to be the next stage, which I call beyond surviving. People call it all sorts of things.
Yes.
And people have all sorts of great ways of getting people there. You know, my way is just one way. But get there, you know, and there even can be some therapists who are good at that if they have certain perspectives or modalities and things like that. But if you're noticing that you're somebody who's been in that stage for quite a while, I really just want to encourage anyone who's listening to start getting curious about that, and maybe think, okay, maybe there are some alternative supports or alternative things that I should be looking at that will help me move forward.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. So your book is then a workbook as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So is that something that people only can do, or they can only get the program to do with you? Can they do it on their own? How does that work?
No, they can actually do it on their own. The guidebook is available for purchase on Amazon, iTunes, all of those good places.
Okay.
And of course, yes, if they're working with me either as an individual or in groups, or via email, then we use the guidebook as well. And I always encourage people, if they do purchase the book and they're working through it on their own, it says in there, like, feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or concerns or feedback, because while it is written both with the idea that people can do it on their own and in support with me, I always like people who are using the book to reach out even so, just so, you know, I kind of know what they're up to and can hold them in some kind of way.
Yes, yeah. That's beautiful. And we're going to touch upon that later, but on your website, RachelGrantCoaching.com, people can also access the book, right?
Yeah, if they can, there's all sorts of ways to get at it.
Okay,
yes. So
just Google it, right? Beyond Surviving,
Rachel
Grant.
On the website.
Exactly. You're all over the place. Yeah. So, but I want to hear from you. You know, you talk about the wiring, our thinking, you know, that can get in the way with our connecting to our genuine self. And so I'd love to hear how you work with people on that.
Okay, so I have to, because I'm like super excited about this.
Okay.
So I love all of this. This is like super, super important to me, because when I came to understand how the brain is really impacted by trauma and what that then tells us about how we can heal and move on with our lives, oh my goodness, Baba, it just opened up so much for me. Because there was this moment where I started going, okay, I have all this junk in my head. I have all these thoughts. My mind is kind of my worst enemy most days.
Yes.
Where does all of that come from anyway? And what do I do about that? How do I begin to shift that thinking? And nothing that I've been trying so far has been working, you know, so there must be something to it. And so I really dug in to the science of the brain. And without getting, you know, too far into all the nitty-gritty of it, what we really need to know is that the brain is comprised of neurons, billions and billions of neurons. And they're constantly firing and connecting with one another. It's like a big party in your head. And eventually, these connections and these associations become very vast and very interconnected. So it's almost like there's this big highway going on in your head, right?
Yes.
Now, every single time one of these, what's called a neuronal pathway, kind of gets lit up, it produces something, either a thought, a feeling, behavior. And so the problem with abuse is that all sorts of things get wired that are just junk. And until we start rewiring that and changing that, we're kind of going to be stuck with certain beliefs and certain thoughts. So just for a moment, just as like a little fun exercise, something to think about.
Yes.
Think about like the first time you had pumpkin pie. Okay. So you got like a little smile, a little like, oh, moment. And for everybody listening or watching, same thing happened. You kind of went to like, oh, who was there? What was that sensation? Was that good? Did I like that? And if you had a really yummy experience, you might have like, oh yeah, that was great. You got excited. Your facial expression changed. So that neuronal pathway that got created way back when you had pumpkin pie for the first time just lit up in your brain. And all sorts of responses happened without you even doing anything else. It just happened. Now, notice that I was nowhere near you when you had your first pumpkin pie. I didn't know you then. Yeah.
Yes.
Yet I can elicit all of that response just by pushing that button, right? And this is what's happening all the time, is that, and this is why we experience things like they're happening in the present moment, even if something is only remotely related to it. Because the brain, certain parts of the brain anyway, don't have a sense of time. So your brain didn't stop and go, oh, well, I'm just listening to Rachel talk about pumpkin pie, so I don't need to go and get all that data.
Yes.
It just said, oh, pumpkin pie, yes, XYZ, put it all together.
Yes.
And what's actually really, really cool in a fun way is that I have now been added to your neuronal pathway of pumpkin pie.
Oh, so next time I eat pumpkin pie, I'll be thinking of Rachel.
Right. Exactly. That's right. And I made that particular neuronal pathway even stronger as well. And that's really fun when it comes to like feelings of love, feelings of yumminess, like pumpkin pie. But when it comes to something like abuse, that really sucks. Because the more that we have pathways lit up, like I'm no good, I can't trust anyone, people are dangerous, man, it's like we take these 1-lane roads and we make it a 2-lane road, and then a 3-lane road, and then a 4-lane road. And that's why we have these moments where we just kind of automatically respond to something.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't even know why I'm responding that way, but I just am. It's because there's a neuronal pathway up there that's going, is this, then this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so what sucks about that ultimately is that that's not who we're meant to be. That's not who we are.
That's just our brain. It's not.
It's just our brain,
yeah.
And it's our brain because of the, I don't know if I can curse, but the bullshit.
Yes, you can.
Okay. The bullshit and the lies that occurred as a result of the abuse. So I'm not valuable is a lie, but we experience it as a truth and we experience it as a reality. And the more that happens, the more and more we become disconnected from who we really are. So at the end of the day, healing, recovery, what it means to have moved on, it really is like just stripping all of those layers, stripping it out so that your best, most wonderful self can show up again. Because she or he is in there.
Yes.
It's just been covered up. And the more that we challenge these pathways, the more that we retrain the brain, drop that belief, drop that bullshit, drop that, crazy idea.
Yes.
The more we really get to be who we're supposed to be.
Yes. I love your just no nonsense. This is it. And you just lit up when I asked you this question, so I can tell you're excited about it, and I'm sure the people you're working with are seeing, results as you get it, and you're able to convey that message pretty passionately to them. So is that when you talk about your exit ramps, is that one of the things related to?
Right. So, I would love to share just some of the basic principles and foundational ideas that can help people get started today with this. So, the first thing that we want to just know is that the brain is automatically wired to assign meanings to any experience that we have, to create associations. So we touch something hot and when it hurts, so we pull it away. the brain creates an association of hot equals danger,
Yes.
so that we don't do it over and over and over again, right? But the same thing happens if we have an association of, like, maybe men equaling danger, then we avoid men, right? And so I sometimes call these associations just stories, because they really are just our attempt to explain why, to narrate a situation.
Yes.
And so the first step to begin unraveling all of this mess is to become really good at separating what is actually happening from our stories and our interpretations. So just as a little example, I was a very cuddly little kid. All the way up until age 10, 11, if there was a lap, I was in it. And when I sat down with my grandfather, I snuggled in really close with him, because that's what we do, we cuddle.
Yes.
But then he started touching me, right? So the what happened of that situation is very, very simple. He touched me. And it can sometimes be alarming to people, because it's like, whoa, like, that's just like so straight matter of fact.
Yes.
But it really is that simple when it comes to the what happened.
Yes.
Now, the story is never that simple. And of course, I had many, many, many different stories. But one of them was, if I'm cuddly and close, bad things are going to happen to me. See, my child mind is trying to explain why this thing happened. And I can't blame him, because that's just bad, and he's supposed to love me and care for me. So it must be something else that's causing this.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, as a result of that belief, I then go on to do things in my life a very particular way. I push affection away. I get scared if anyone gets really close to me. And so it's like I lost a whole part of who I really was because of that belief. Yeah. So one of the first things we have to be able to do is challenge those beliefs. And one way to do that is to look for alternative explanations. What else could be going on here that caused that to happen? And for me, I came up with, my grandfather chose to abuse me because that's what he chose to do. And it had nothing to do with who I am or how I was as a person.
Yes.
And as soon as I challenge that belief, it's like the door opens to something new.
Yes.
Right? So if it's not really true that cuddling equals bad things, that he made a choice to do something and it had nothing to do with me being cuddly, well, guess what I get to have back in my life now? Cuddling!
Yes!
And I am an amazing cuddler again. Right?
That's great.
Yeah. And so when we do this, when we challenge a thought, it actually doesn't even have to be, it can be nonsensical. I could say, oh, he was abducted by aliens and he didn't even know what he was doing.
Yes.
The thing to notice is that as soon as we start challenging those thoughts, one very important thing happens. Well, two. One, look at where the shift of focus goes. It came off of me and it went to the other person.
Yes.
Or to the other people. You start to see, wait a minute, there are other things going on here, and that's the unfortunate thing about our brain. In some ways, we always like to make it about us. And so as soon as we start noticing, wait, this isn't just about me, this is about what this person is doing, what this person is choosing, that's really powerful. The second thing is that as soon as I did that, and I kept repeating that, because it didn't go away the first time, right? But as soon as the next time it came up and I said, no, cuddling is awesome, I love cuddling, cuddling gives me access to blank, 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 that neuronal pathway that had been created starts becoming weaker and weaker, and some neuronal pathways completely die out. It's completely gone. Like, I don't have any fears around cuddling these days, right? It's completely wiped out.
Wow.
Yeah. So now we can sometimes, well, let me just pause there. I'll just pause there because I could keep going, but I'll pause so that if you have any thoughts or responses to that or questions, if anything
All right. Well, I just think it's, I love what you're sharing because I recognized for my journey, it was helpful to understand that I was still responding to a brain reaction, or belief that I'd taken on as a child that kept me safe and protected from overwhelm while the abuse was happening. But now it's getting in the way. I keep bringing it here because my brain, like you said, it hurt back then. It's going to hurt just as bad now, right? And it wasn't until I was willing to go in and really assess, no, he is an ocean and a continent away. I'm here now. I'm with safe people. No one's going to hurt me. Plus I'm in a big body, but it was such a relief to understand, like, ugh, I'm not broken or stupid. This is like normal for my brain to do. Like, it's hardwired to protect me, right?
Yes.
So it was huge too. So I'm so glad you're here and explaining this so beautifully and simply, because someone who's researching the brain would probably make this sound a lot more complicated, but you just went right to it, and I just loved it. It made complete sense. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to know that that the brain is challenged when it comes to time. And until we do certain things to remind us, oh, wait a second, I'm in like 2015, just like you're saying, that it's not going to make do anything other than think that what's happening right now is exactly the same as what was happening right then.
Yes.
And again, it can even be just shades of it. It doesn't have to be exactly the same. And it can be, oh God, it can be so hard on us when it feels like it's just going and it's just happening. And I think that was my favorite thing about learning about the brain, because what that meant was, wait a minute, there are things that I can now do. This isn't just like a big spaghetti problem where I'm never going to be able to find my way through it.
Yes.
But it's very like, do this, then do this, then do this.
Yes.
And you'll get the same outcome every single time.
Yeah.
It really becomes like a math equation.
Yeah.
This plus this equals this.
Yeah.
And what's really, really interesting is that, we talk about anytime something happens, we interpret it.
Yes.
And then from that interpretation, we then make certain choices or do certain things, right? So, was molested when I was cuddly. Cuddly is bad. Choices and decisions are stay away from me, get away from me, don't touch me, right? And for years, what I did was, okay, I'm just gonna suck it up. I'm just gonna like force myself to like be close to someone, right? Yes. I'm just gonna do that. And I kept trying to change what I was doing. But as soon as I changed the story, the doing just naturally flowed from that. And so if you're out there and you're feeling like I keep trying and I keep doing something different, I keep trying to take different actions, but it just stays the same, it's because the belief that's sitting there before it hasn't changed. And it's only when we shift that, it's literally like we can reach in and pluck that out.
Yes.
Put something else new in.
Yes.
And we get a whole exactly, like 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
As soon as we take out that 2, we put it in a 3, we get a different answer.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with our lives.
Yeah. So you changed that association with why he did it, the story part, and then you could respond differently. It was no longer because you were bad or something wrong with you. It was now because of him, like you said. You put it outside of yourself. Is that, I'm hearing you correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's one of the ways. Yeah. Another thing that I did to help my brain is because sometimes the brain just wants to go onto autopilot and it just wants to go shooting off right into that old place that it's always been, is I had to figure out a way to help my brain not do that as quickly so that I would have time to do that challenging step.
Yes.
And so here's what I discovered, is that the emergency center of our brain, which is the amygdala, if you care about the exact names, and most people think of it as the fight, flight, freeze.
Yes.
That's part of the brain that causes that.
Yeah.
Well, it's like a hub, and from that hub, there are thousands of pathways leading out from it, right? And that is why we can immediately take reaction, take action or respond to something. It's because the amygdala can flood our system. Now, the part of our brain that goes, no, cuddling isn't bad, it's really safe and awesome, or hey, everything's okay, it's 2015, the prefrontal cortex, it has like an old country lane road. It's just chilling. It's like, well, I'll get there one day, I'll get there.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is awesome when there is a tiger about to attack you and you need to run and get away from here.
Yes.
It's not so awesome when it's this stuff that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the amygdala always has, he gets first priority, okay? And it's like anytime something falls next to you, you jump and then you look and go, oh, it's just a broom.
Yeah.
We never get to do that in the other order. We can't on a neurological level. So we can't be rational and then be responsive. We are always responsive, reactive, and then rational. So what we have to learn how to do is squash the amygdala.
Okay.
Not get rid of it because we need, the amygdala is good. It keeps us safe most of the time.
Yes.
But there are times when it's running out of control and it really shouldn't be and it doesn't need to be. So one of the ways that you can interrupt the signal from the amygdala and the flooding is by simply shifting your focus. And this is one of the exit ramps that I mentioned. It's that you ask yourself a question. What did I have for breakfast? What time is it? What color is this chair? It needs to be a question that you don't automatically know the answer to. So not like, what's my name? Because your brain doesn't have to do any work to pull up that answer. It just knows it. It's too well ingrained. But what did I have for breakfast? Brain has to stop and go, wait, what did I have for breakfast? And in that moment, the amygdala loses some of its juice. And so when you're having a panic attack, and you're feeling anxious and stuff is coming up and or you're just in your head going on about something. See, nobody ever loves me. Nothing's ever going to be good. Everything always falls apart for me. What did I have for breakfast? Okay, I actually didn't eat breakfast today. So, nothing. But that interrupts that signal and it gives the prefrontal cortex time to come in and go, hey, chill out. It's really okay. It's all right. And you may have to go a couple of rounds, but basically what it's doing is it's helping you recalibrate. It's helping your system to calm down, to shift down. And I love that because sometimes as survivors, we have a lot of stuff that our brain is just doing on autopilot, and it just happens really quick. And so this step of challenging the thought is sometimes one that has to come after the fact, after we've regulated ourselves, and this little exercise is one that I use all the time and teach my clients for handling those moments where we just go almost like immediately into overwhelm or panic. And then once you're back to a calm state, you can look back at the experience and go, okay, wait a minute. What was the story? What was the belief that led to the panic, the upset, the anger, etc.?
Yeah. What do you say to someone who, their anxiety is like so constant? I don't want to say all the time, but they feel it. It comes. It kind of takes over. But then they have a hard time putting their finger on what started it, like what triggered that anxiety. Right.
Yeah. So general anxiety, where you're just kind of in a constant state. And again, this is not textbook, and this is not like fully researched.
No.
But what I think of that as is it's not so much about anxiety; it's about being hypervigilant. So every single thing in your life you're seeing as a threat, right? And so that is why there's this feeling of, well, I don't know what thing. It seems like everything.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the issue there is to not address anxiety; is to address the hypervigilance. Why are you always afraid? Why are you always looking for a problem? Why are you always on guard? Right?
That makes sense.
And then when you've done that, you'll be able to get tuned into more specific experiences that might be causing specific anxieties.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And once we've done that, which actually starts to happen with a lot of this foundational work on retraining the brain, because you're parsing out those beliefs that are driving you
Yes.
to be scared, to be worried, to feel inept. And this is why the exercises that I do on anxiety come at about month 4 or 5, as opposed to, right, even if somebody says, I'm super anxious all the time,
yes.
I say, I get it. Don't worry, we're going to get there.
Yes.
But in that way, by the time we get to the actual anxiety busting exercises, we can actually do it, and it actually will have an effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the client will maybe have a better understanding as to why they're having anxiety, right? It didn't just seem irrational, automatic experience.
Yeah.
You know, so.
That's right. It's very cool.
I'm impressed.
So I don't know, how are we doing on time? There's one other exit ramp strategy that I could talk about, but I don't know how we are for time.
We are almost there, but I would love to hear it. So we're going to go as long as it takes, because I think our audience wants to hear it too. So
okay, sure. Well, this little exercise is all about arming ourselves with a powerful statement. And there's this beautiful concept in Buddhism, though you find it everywhere. I just like the way the Buddhists say it.
Yes.
Which is that language furnishes both an indication of our character and also a lever for shifting it. And so if I have a belief about myself that I can't be cuddly, that's an indicator of my character. If I talk about I can't be cuddly, cuddling is dangerous, I'm telling people about who I am, what kind of experiences I want to have. But notice, as soon as I start saying I can cuddle, I've just totally shifted my character. I'm a completely different person then.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And in many, many ways, the journey of healing is about shifting our character, going from being not valuable to being valuable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, going from being scared and in pain to being joyful and happy.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite places to start is just in using our language, because we can spend a lot of time all day long using language in a very destructive way. And so one of my favorite exercises is to make a list of the things that you would like to know and believe about yourself. These are not things you actually know and believe, but things that you would like to know and believe.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started, my list was I'm valuable, I'm intelligent, I'm beautiful, I'm funny, I'm sexy, I'm amazing, I can trust people, I can cuddle, right?
Yes.
And I started saying that list out loud every day. And boy, did I feel silly,
yes.
right? Because my brain would literally go, what are you doing, Rachel? This does not compute.
Yes.
None of this is true, right? And on a very real neurological level, I was forcing my brain to do something that it wasn't used to doing. It didn't really want to do.
Yes.
But after doing it for a while, it started to weaken those old neuronal pathways and gave me access to being able to do other work that's necessary to get to the actual believing stage. And so I want to make a really important distinction here, because I know positive affirmations are far and wide, you know, this thing, but this is not positive affirmation. An affirmation is something that you are affirming because you believe it,
yes.
right?
Yes.
That's what it means to affirm.
Yes.
It's like I have red hair. Every time I say, I'm just affirming that. I know that. I don't
Yes.
need to be convinced of that.
Yeah.
And affirmations can be really damaging if you don't have that distinction, that it's not about believing it. And that's why I call these declarations. It's what we're declaring. It's like what we're calling from the future and saying, I want that to be here with me now. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And so I love this practice. And, you know, just one quick story that comes to mind was when I was kind of towards the end of this, and I had really been doing this, and I was starting to notice, hey, I think this I'm valuable thing might actually be real and not like some pipe dream. I was out with a friend and his friend who was visiting, and we were just chatting as you do getting to know somebody new or whatever? And she kind of says out of the blue to me, oh, you're just a really shallow person. And I was like, what? She really stunned me because, first of all, who does that? But the second thing that happened almost stunned me more because I pulled my friend aside, which, first of all, that was an accomplishment, taking somebody aside to have a conversation, right? And I said, I don't know what that was about, but I am way too valuable to be talked that way. So I'm going to peace out. I'll see you later. And then it just hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, there it is.
Yes.
And that's what I love about this is, when we really start to get it into our system, our responses to situations, how we handle things, they just naturally flow from the beliefs that we have.
Yeah.
And so, everything that I've talked about today, I really encourage people to just think about as kind of exercise for the brain.
Yes.
Yes. And, the more we do push-ups, the more strong, we get in our arms. And it's the same thing with the brain. The more we practice these things, the stronger the brain gets, the stronger the new beliefs get. And it's all rooted in science, which I totally love. That was such a relief to me,
yes.
To know that this wasn't some airy-fairy, new agey thing, but that it was really real. And the more we do that, just to say one more time, because I really think it's important for people to hear, is the more we do that, the more we strip away those beliefs and those layers, the more we get to be our best, most wonderful selves.
Yes.
We get to go out into the world and be who we want to be and do the things we want to do and not have all of that bullshit from the past interfering all the time.
Exactly.
And that's my ultimate heart and wish for every survivor, that they get to be there and they get to live in that place.
Wow, Rachel, you've delivered a lot of hope just in this time here with you, because you have pretty much laid out, I think, maybe there's some pieces you haven't delivered, but I can completely see how you can help someone go from that overwhelmed, powerless, I'm in the knee-jerk reaction to life situations constantly, I feel out of control. The whole process that you've just taken us to that, the identity, where who you are and you value yourself. That's when you can start to set boundaries to the things that you don't want in your life, which is so beautiful. You finally start to wait a minute, that's not who I am. I don't want that. And then you can speak back to people who keep treating you like who you used to be based on your old beliefs, right?
Right.
So,
exactly.
So yeah, I've been married 20 years. I had to train my husband as I changed. So I'm like, honey, you're talking to Svava, who she was 10 years ago. That's not who I am anymore. That doesn't go anymore. Sorry, dude.
Right.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Exactly. Well, and I have his respect and honor and stronger friendship for it. So,
absolutely. My goodness, that could be another conversation, isn't it? About how when we change, how we have to kind of support or guide those around us in seeing us newly as well. So that's a whole other piece to it, right?
Yes.
Thank you for that. There are so many layers, but what I do hope, just with what the program is an 8-month program, right?
Yes.
So
this
is a piece of a much bigger puzzle, but even just with this, if people start applying these little things here or there, it can make such a huge difference. And I always hope to just encourage people, because at the end of the day, it's a process and it's a journey, but it's not insurmountable. It's not impossible, And so thank you so much for letting me be here and share what I love with people.
Yes, well, you're more than welcome. I've been enjoying myself. Like I said, my heart's over here singing, because I love it when we're sharing things that plants, seeds for hope, and, the tools that you're giving people are things that they don't have to sign up for 10 years of therapy. I'm sorry if I'm being down on, but you know what I mean? It's like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this and I can practice. It's always good to have a model, right? Someone that you can, okay, this is how that looks like and feels like. And if you have the big feelings, that someone is going to hold that space for you until you feel like, okay, I can handle those. But it's like, no, we're not broken or damaged goods forever. And actually, when we come through on the other side, we're like, oh my goodness, I'm a completely different person. And I'm in love with who I am today. It's like, why did I wait so long? So it's a beautiful thing. And again, I'm so glad you do the work that you do, because you clearly have a passion for it. And when someone is just so direct and eloquent but simple, you're so just simple, and you just spoke to my heart. So and I want to thank you for being here, for sharing your message with us. And I want to remind our viewers that you have a free gift link, and I'm going to put it underneath our video. But it's from your website, therachelgrantcoaching.com, and there's going to be a slash there in abandonment, but they will have that direct link. But what is it? What's the free gift that they're going to get from you?
Yeah. So this is an audio guidebook. So it's all about abandonment, which of course is a biggie for us,
yes,
folks who have been through abuse. And so it's going to basically talk to you about, there are audio recordings and then also a workbook that go along with this free gift. And it just explores what abandonment is, why we get into it, what it's all really about, and of course, because it's me, what to do about it.
Yes.
So,
awesome.
How to move on, how to handle it, how to transform that area of your life. Yeah.
Right. That's awesome. And I really hope people take advantage of it, because it's going to make a big difference if they give it a try. And of course, to reach out to you for some support if they get stuck, or if they want some one-on-one or further support from you. But
that's right.
I want to thank you again for your time, your beautiful smile, and your vibrant energy. Thank you. And as a survivor thriver, from my heart to yours, just again, thank you for your relentless compassion that you're putting out into the world.
Oh, thank you. I adore you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.